Releasing in March of 2018, Kirby Star Allies was the first-party Nintendo game of 2018. And because Nintendo fans were dying for a first-party release, this built up a lot of hype. And introduced in a Nintendo Direct before the game released was the new copy ability, but it was kind of different because it had the friend ability, where you could get your friends, your allies, to do all the copy abilities that Kirby could do too. So this meant that Kirby could have his copy ability from any enemy, but he had also 3 other friends with 3 different abilities. For example, if you had a water character, a fire character, or a magic character, you could all have different abilities, as well as Kirby having his own abilities too. You'd always play as Kirby in the main campaign, and different puzzles would allow other abilities in order for them to be used. It was kind of interesting because it kind of added that new idea of abilities being able to be used within Kirby, but ultimately many thought that the single player main campaign for the game was very simple and very easy. And honestly, apart from 3 NPCs following you around, this Kirby game wasn't all that different. It looked like a Kirby game, it played like a Kirby game, it was exactly what we expected. And was it bad? No, not at all. But was it good? No, it was just kind of bland, and it came and went, honestly. The game at launch felt very bare bones. There was a 5-hour main campaign and a couple of minigames. You could probably, at most, even if you were 100%ing the game, maybe get around 25 hours of gameplay out of Star Allies. Yes, while the core gameplay was great, it wasn't worth the price. Considering if you'd already played a Kirby game on the 3DS, it wasn't worth getting this one on Switch. It definitely wasn't worth buying a Switch for. Each level that you play in Kirby Star Allies, you can unlock different puzzle pieces. These puzzle pieces are all procedurally generated, and it's all separated in when you're going to get it. It's not destined where these puzzle pieces are, they're just randomly placed on wherever it's going to be. So yeah, you're not really sure when you're going to get a puzzle piece, but it's guaranteed you're going to get some within a level. And these puzzle pieces unlock different parts of a massive long puzzle, 4 different massive big puzzles within the main game. So it's kind of interesting. You can go back and play the same level over and over again, unlocking more puzzle pieces. I might say that these puzzle pieces were a way to extend the game or give it some unlockables, but really it only unlocked about 4 different pieces of artwork. And yes, it is fun to get more puzzle pieces and see these puzzles go together. Was it really worth going through the levels? The amount of time it took. One 4-5 minute level might only get you 4 or 5 different pieces, if that. It could even be as low as 2 or 3 pieces per each puzzle. Which, yes, is fun and satisfying to fill out a puzzle piece, but is it really worth the time and effort it's going to take to fill out that puzzle? To me, it wasn't, and I didn't see much incentive to do this. The game's story is set over 5 different worlds, and is a genuine just Kirby adventure. There's not really much to see here, but it is nice to see that the world does change in its linear, sort of level-based, level world select stage. So you can see the world changing. For example, you see the grassy hills of the first world, and then we eventually move into space with some of the later worlds. It's nice to see that the world is changing as the story is progressing. Now, I'm not expecting a 100-hour JRPG story from Kirby Star Allies, but the story from this game is basically, darkness has taken over, you've got to stop the darkness, Kirby's the only person that can do it, his friends are going to help, you have 5 hours, go! So, yes, the story wasn't great here, but there was a story nonetheless. Was it what I was expecting from Kirby? Kind of, but something else would have been a little bit nicer here. Obviously, Kirby's been around for a while, there's been lots of games within the series. There's just not much gimmick here, apart from the allies, which don't really add enough. They're just NPCs, they just follow you around and they have abilities that can help you out with puzzles. They don't really do much. Comparing this to Planet Robobot, where you go around in a mech, the gimmick for this game isn't that great. It is a very good beginner Kirby game. And this might be where the developers were really going with this. They was trying to get this to go into the beginners, or trying to really appeal to the beginners at that target audience. That same year, they also brought out Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. So I guess that's kind of what they were doing in 2018. They were trying to get as many people as possible, casual people, into Nintendo Switch and buying Nintendo Switch systems. Purely, if you were going to get this game for a kid and introduce them into Kirby, it's a great game to get them introduced to. But for long-time fans of the Kirby franchise, were pretty much disappointed with this one. Again, very similar to the backlash that Pokemon fans would feel that November of the same year. Similar to Pokemon Let's Go, Kirby Star Allies goes for the multiplayer approach, and it is nice to see multiplayer added into a Kirby game, but it feels very samey. I mean, even we've seen this in games such as New Super Mario Bros. U or Mario Maker 2. It's a 2D platform with multiplayer. It doesn't really add that much. And where Pokemon was a 2-player RPG and was kind of unique in that, and a 2-player Pokemon game we'd never seen before, the pure the pure mechanics of Kirby Star Allies wasn't that great in terms of how new it was. We've seen 2D platforms and multiplayer before. I believe that the devs were trying to go for something a little bit like Little Big Planet in this sense, that you can have up to 4 players, multiplayer side-scroller 2D levels. Where Little Big Planet shines is in how hard the levels can be, and how easy the levels can be, and how many different tricks you have to do to the levels, and being stuck on a level, having parts where 2 people have to do the same thing within a level. That's where Little Big Planet was fun, in the sense of that people could go wrong, people could get annoyed at each other within a game, making more entertainment for themselves outside of the game. But because Star Allies is so easy, that multiplayer isn't really there, and people are just holding down the left stick, pushing it right, and jumping when they need to, or attacking when they need to. It's so easy, it just kind of takes all the fun out of it, to be honest. The game has over 30 levels, and most of them are over within 5 minutes, because the entire time you're just pushing left, jumping and attacking when needed. This game is definitely aimed at kids, and you might be wondering, yes, of course it is aimed at kids, look at its art style, but again, I feel Nintendo has failed to realise the full target audience here. You could say pretty much anything from Nintendo is aimed at kids. Splatoon, Donkey Kong Country, Yoshi, Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Mario Maker. Look at its art style. Mario Maker is aimed at kids, but look at how many adults play it on YouTube and get frustrated at its levels. Kirby really failed in this regard. It went straight for the kids and the target audience, and I understand Kirby isn't going to be the hardest game ever, but I feel personally they really left out the hardcore fans here. For the technical aspect of the game runs at 1080p docked and 720p undocked. That's exactly what I'd expect from this game. I mean, in terms of visuals, it looks nice, it looks okay, it's exactly what I'd be expecting. It's not anything groundbreaking, but it's not insulting to look at. It's just exactly what I'd expect, and that's the main problem with this game, as I said previously. It's exactly what you'd expect from a Kirby game, and it hasn't really changed anything, hasn't really broke any boundaries here. And at least at launch, the lack of content really just made this more insulting. I played this game just through its story mode in March of 2018, and I managed to complete 51% of the story mode just by playing the game, not even actively going to 100% it, and that only took me 4 or 5 hours to do. If I go again, do the other 50%, I'm only going to get to maybe 8 to 10 hours out of the main story mode. That main story mode icon, which is the biggest part of the screen, yeah, this is Kirby Star Allies' largest mode, and it's probably the one that's you're going to get through in the least amount of time. It's not fleshed out as much as I'd want it to be. The game's icons on its main screen remind me of Super Smash Bros. 4 and kind of a little bit like Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is kind of nice because you can see exactly all the different modes that you've got, and the developers did add more modes as time went on. Because for some reason the developers decided to add DLC to Kirby. Now, this makes sense, and at the time Nintendo were doing this for other games. They were doing DLC for ARMS and Splatoon, but those games made sense because they were online games. They needed free updates to keep the game fresh and to keep players playing the game online. But Kirby doesn't really need DLC. It doesn't need people to keep returning to the game every couple of months when there's more content out. I believe that Kirby Star Allies should have had all the content that it has now from the beginning. It didn't need some content at launch, a little bit more content later, and a little bit more content after that. People want to play a Kirby game, enjoy it, and most likely not return to it until they want to have a full, complete playthrough of it again. This was a similar issue that Mario Tennis Aces had that same year in June. People were frustrated at that game because that had a lacking story mode and lacking content and lacking online modes, and eventually they added more and more content as time went on, but really, Nintendo was very bare bones with their releases in the beginning of 2018. Kirby Star Allies and Mario Tennis Aces had a very similar design, I guess, in the sense of they didn't launch with a lot and slowly added more content later. Now, there is no reason why they decided to do this. I mean, it could be that the games weren't really that ready to be released, and the devs were working on these DLC updates in the background to sort of fill up these games as time goes on, or maybe they were trying to keep people interested and trying to advertise the game as much as possible. So advertise it for launch, advertise it the June after launch, advertise it the December after launch to try and get sales up. Or maybe it was that Nintendo were just, I don't know, just trying to get people to not sell on their copies of the game. I genuinely don't know. If I buy Kirby Star Allies in March and I beat it, but there might be DLC in the future, that's going to prevent me from selling on the game. So I don't know. I don't really know what the intention was here, but I would have to say it's maybe that development time. They didn't have enough time to fully finish the game. And that's where the DLC comes in for Star Allies. The DLC added the guest stars Star Allies Go, where you could basically play remix levels with every single character, and that would take a very long time because you have to play it through every single character, but I don't believe there's much incentive here to do that. So yeah, I mean, while it is nice, it's fine to play it, I guess, but it wasn't really that great to do. It was just sort of remix levels where you could get more puzzle pieces and such, and you had to play it within like record-breaking times and beat your own times with different characters. And because there's so many different characters, it would take forever to do. And the rewards, I don't think, were that great for actually doing this, so that wasn't great. There's then also Heroes in Another Dimension, which was kind of like a post-game DLC for the Kirby Star Allies. And if the game had more content at launch, or had more content in general, they could have charged maybe £8-9 for this as extra DLC, as a post-game, and they could have charged for that, and that would have been fine. But my problem with Heroes in Another Dimension is, it was released so long after, and it was kind of a post-game to what had happened within the main story. It released in December. The game came out in March, and this didn't release till December. I believe like a week or so before Smash Bros came out. So yeah, people were really going to be playing this because Smash Bros came out days later. I really didn't understand why they decided to do this, but I guess it kind of acts as a post-game, and while it is there added into the game, it does add some more content, but it was added way too late. While it is fun to play, it's just you don't really unlock that much. You unlock more allies that can join you, and that's what they added with more DLC too. They added more allies. I don't think people wanted more allies. They didn't want more NPCs. I believe that people wanted more levels and more content and more things to do within the game, and I guess unlocking more allies was kind of fun, but I don't know, it just seemed kind of weird that they were doing that as DLC, where it should have been in the game to begin with. The game also included some mini-games from launch too. These were there from launch, to be fair, and these were Star Slam Heroes, The Ultimate Choice, and Chop Champs. Star Slam Heroes was basically like the home run contest from Super Smash Bros, where you have to hit a meteor with a baseball bat as far as you can. Very simple little mini-game. It didn't really add much to the game for me. It was also like a boss rush mode where you could go through all the different bosses within the game, and also like a little mini-game where you cut down trees. Yeah, it was very weird, this whole like mini-game thing they were trying to add into the game, and it is more content, and to be fair, some of the mini-games were there from launch, but ultimately, is Kirby Star Allies worth it now? Now, I believe that the game itself is okay. It's a fine game within itself, but I believe it had a lot of problems at launch. You know, it didn't need to have DLC. It could have done with all of this content at launch, and maybe it made a better first impression on me. You know, I really did enjoy the story mode for what it was. It was okay. However, it was probably the easiest game I've ever played. It is an incredibly easy game, and it's probably designed for younger people, and that's perfectly fine. But as someone who was, you know, expecting a little bit more from this, I'm a bit disappointed on that front. If you've got kids that are getting into platformers, getting into Nintendo, Kirby Star Allies is a great game to play, but apart from that, it can be very frustrating in the sense of it's so easy that older fans might not enjoy it. And a lot of the content was not there from launch, which kind of made a bad impression in my mouth, but looking back on it now, there is more content there. However, though, a lot of that content is repeated a lot. So a lot of the content that you will be doing, you will see over and over again. For example, replaying levels to get puzzle pieces, or doing the same minigame all over again, or fighting the same bosses. There's a lot of reused content within the game. However, there's also been a lot of content added, so, you know, if you played this game back in March of 2018, you want to jump back in, now's a perfect time to do so. There is more content within the game, but just remember that a lot of the content that you will be playing through, you'll be playing through for the second time, because a lot of it is repeated, because you have to play levels over and over again. It's okay, it's a fine game. I was expecting way more for it, and there's a lot of reused content, and a lot of content wasn't there at launch, but overall, it's a fine Nintendo Switch experience. I would like a better Kirby game. I would like a more, I don't know, advanced Kirby game would probably be the right word to say. Just a more, groundbreaking, or a Kirby game where they try something new, not just more of the same. Because that's what this game very much feels like. It feels like a more of the same game. So, yeah, let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below about Kirby Star Allies. And I will see you next week for the final episode of Owen's Thoughts on Season 1, Super Mario Odyssey.